Hello, how's everyone doing? Today we're going over another set of news that I call the fun category. The first one isn't so much fun as it is just interesting, and that is a blog post by Wiz Research that has compromised Hugging Face's entire infrastructure. So, if you recall, one of my videos previously was how to upload malicious models onto the Hugging Face hub. On the Hugging Face hub, you can upload your models, and some of these models use Pickle as a method of storing them. If you don't know, I have a video on that where I upload a malicious model that when people download it and execute it, then it will like open the web browser and stuff like this. Because when you load these models using Pickle, you can just execute arbitrary code. Like there could be arbitrary code there and you're just executing that. So therefore, everyone has been working around this a little bit. Hugging Face has been actually coming up with a new format to store models called safe tensors, which can't do that anymore. The downside is obviously that the code has to come from somewhere. What Pickle is great at is really saving arbitrary things. And with these more constrained formats, you're actually reducing the space of what you can say down to, okay, we can store the tensors for whatever architecture we already know. However, it's a good compromise. Now, Hugging Face again has implemented safe tensors. Hugging Face has also implemented model scanning. So on the hub, it will actually tell you, hey, this model uses Pickle, and even more, hey, this model uses functions inside deep pickling that could execute arbitrary code. So they actively warn you, saying this model has 3 files that have been marked as unsafe. And if you go to the model that I have uploaded onto the Hugging Face hub right now, it will say something like this. However, what this company here realized is they just warn you. They don't prevent you from downloading and running it. Now that's cool, give the responsibility to the people, but they've also noticed that the inference API here on the Hugging Face site isn't turned off for dangerous models. They could make Hugging Face execute these models. All right, so they did that. And in fact, they have managed to get a shell on the pod that runs the inference API on the Hugging Face side. And then they were able to do some escalation tricks and actually kind of take over the entire Hugging Face cluster. Yeah, so privilege escalations and so on. They were able to see all kinds of stuff, what's going on internally. Hugging Face runs on Amazon Web Services on a Kubernetes cluster. They were able to get pretty far. Now they have noticed Hugging Face, and Hugging Face has now plugged these holes. However, it's still very interesting, that intersection between kind of just wanting to store and share models and Hugging Face being this really awesome resource for the community to make these things available. And that brings with it a lot of infrastructure questions. So I don't know, maybe the solution is just to not allow inference API for anything that uses Pickle, because ultimately probably a good thing to kind of force people to go towards safe tensors if they want the Hugging Face API to be available for their models. Hugging Face could nudge people a little bit. I'm usually not in favor of nudging, but I think this is such a big security hole that it does make sense. There's a new paper called Re-evaluating GPT-4's bar exam performance. One of the big announcements around GPT-4 when it came out is that it really aced the bar exam compared to other exam takers, and it was like beating most of the humans, the 90th percentile in the bar exam. However, this paper re-examines that and downgrades it a little bit. So if, depending on which exam you consider and to whom you compare, you get very different results. Sometimes it's more like 62nd percentile, sometimes it's more like 15th percentile, and so on. So notably, if you want to know more, go read this article, but be safe to know the way that GPT-4's bar exam performance has been characterized previously is, let's say, a little bit overstated. However, even considering all of that, I think even being in the same domain as humans on something like this is still pretty good. Like, I'm pretty sure, I don't know, 5 years ago, nobody could have guessed too much that in such a short time will be, even if it's the 15th percentile, you know, that still means out of 100 humans that take the bar exam, 15 are worse than a thing that does matrix multiplications. And that's already pretty astounding. So both good news and bad news. Recalibrate your internal scales a little bit to realize better where GPT-4 is at with respect to highly professional domains. On the other hand, still very impressive. Gizmodo writes, Amazon ditches just walk out checkouts at its grocery stores. These stores, Amazon had originally a concept that you just walk in, you just grab stuff and so on, and then you just walk out and you would pay via Amazon Prime or something like this. So the stores would essentially recognize what you would take off the shelves by using surveillance essentially and machine learning in order to recognize that. So one interesting reminder of this article is saying, though it seemed completely automated, Just Walk Out relied on more than 1,000 people in India watching and labeling videos to ensure accurate checkouts. I believe this was known already, but it's still funny to remind yourself that this essentially was it was just a bunch of people watching you via camera and doing cashiering for you. I believe the plan was, obviously, since you have the video recording and you have the labels of the labelers, that eventually you'll get to train models and you'll be relying on those humans less and less and less. I can see, but it's still funny to just, the instantaneous effect this has, or just the optics of this is kind of sad and kind of funny. So the Just Walk Out stores are now discontinued, but I hear California has taken up the concept of Just Walk Out stores, and they don't have to have any humans and cashiers involved at all, it seems. So the concept is going ahead without the machine learning and without any money. And lastly, Jermy Yen tweets out, are medical studies written by ChatGPT? Interestingly, the word delve is one of these words that ChatGPT really likes to overuse. There are several other words that are ChatGPT's favorites compared to regular humans, and the word delve is one of the prime examples of that. So when you use a search for the word delve in PubMed over the years, you see a huge spike in 2023. Where could that come from? I'm not sure. All of us collectively just really wanted to delve into things after 2022. Just a coincidence, I'm sure. Notably, Devin has a bunch of competition now from the open source community. So if you recall one of the previous ML news, Devin was this automatic software engineer and they did a big PR campaign and everyone was like, whoa, this is crazy. And it might have worked a bit too well. There are now at least 4 serious open source projects right on the heels, essentially reproducing what Devin does. And this kind of stuff definitely something that the open source community is really good at, because it's essentially plugging together a few APIs and getting the prompts right and so on in order to make this happen. Yeah, if you have a couple of dozens or even hundreds of volunteers working on it, those things tend to go well. So the first one is Devika, and you're gonna see they all essentially look like Devin. So they have an internal monologue, and here the user instructs Devika to implement Conway's game of life. So the Devika makes a plan of, okay, first I should probably read up on the game of life, then I should do this, then I should do that. Again, like Devin, it has a chat, it has a terminal, it has a file like a code editor, and it has the internet to browse around. And as you can see, eventually the game of life is going to appear here. Fully automated software engineering by Devika. Really nice. Okay, let's see the game of life. Nice. Yeah. Excellent. The second one, and this is probably the one that has garnered the most attention, is by Princeton NLP called SWE Agent. SWE for software engineer. And this actually evaluates really well. So if you look at the results right here, this project is almost at Devin level, whereas Devin didn't even evaluate on the entire SWE benchmark. This is a benchmark where, for example, you have to fix a bug, given a bug report and and so on. And this project, not only does it have all the code available and so on, but also it has a demo available. If you go to their demo page, you can see how it solves a bug. Again, this has here the description of what's going on, a terminal and a code editor. And if you go next step, you can see the internal monologue saying, okay, I should maybe first reproduce a bug, then I'll just copy the code from the bug inside, then I'll probably want to run it. Okay, I'm going to run into the bug. Then given the error message, I can now come up with some sort of plan to fix it, like looking at other files and so on. So on the heels of Devin, pretty tightly. Another one is GPT Pilot. This is also known as Pythagora, if I recall this correctly. And again, this is an automated software engineer, if you will. It has a VS Code plugin, and you can use it and you can give it instructions, and it will automatically plan ahead, write files, and so on for you. Yeah, the Devins campaign might have worked a bit too well there. So they now have to constantly stay ahead against the entire open source world, if you will. And lastly, there is OpenDev, yet another project that you can instruct to do something. So there's a chat, there is a terminal, there is a code editor, there is a web browser. Looks quite familiar, if you will. If you want to contribute to any of these projects, all of them are on GitHub. I don't know how open source or how commercial each one of these are. This one here is MIT licensed. This one here is MIT licensed. This one here is Research Code and MIT licensed. Devika is also MIT licensed. Not sure how much they accept pull requests, but it's all available. Next tool, Lightning Thunder, is a source-to-source compiler that makes PyTorch models up to 40% faster. Notably, they combine really different hardware executors and compile your PyTorch models down to something that goes zoom. This was already possible if you knew what you were doing, I guess, but for plebs like me who don't know what they're doing, having a library available that does it for me and that just makes models go really fast is super helpful. Excellent. Lightning Thunder by Lightning AI. GPT Author is not too far off of sort of these OpenDev kind of things, except this is not for writing apps, but for writing novels. This project utilizes a chain of GPT-4 Stable Diffusion and Anthropic API calls to generate an original fantasy novel. Users can provide an initial prompt and enter how many chapters they'd like it to be, and then AI generates an entire novel, including cover art and anything. So there's now a Claude 3 version and so on. I'm not sure. Like, okay, maybe people really like to generate stories and then read them and consume them. But I heard this saying once that everyone's excited about producing AI-generated content, and absolutely no one is excited about consuming AI-generated content. I'm not sure if that is entirely true, but I don't know how much you want to delve into these novels that are written by these LLMs, because as of now, they're still kind of bland, I guess. Now, there might be a time in the future where you'd rather consume a piece of media generated by AI because you somehow know it is like perfectly hitting the emotional roller coaster and everything every single time, like it is totally optimized not just to human preferences of storytelling, but also to your specific preferences of storytelling, including building in twists and turns into the stories at the exact points it knows, like you love to see that and so on. So I do imagine a future where something like this is preferred to humans, maybe even, but I don't think it's now. But people are already doing it, so you might as well give it a try, if you will, and sell some on Kindle. Maestro is a framework for Claude Opus to orchestrate sub-agents. Also this, I've seen a ton of like commercial projects that go like, oh, we build agents and so on. Also this, I would just wait for the open source community to tackle that. So this breaks down an objective into manageable subtasks using the Opus model, executes each subtask using the Haiku model, provides it with memory, previous subtasks for context, and so on and so on and so on. Definitely the world going into this agentic framework, I guess, having some orchestrator LLM instruct other LLMs, and let's see how far we get with that before we actually need actual symbolics to get involved. I wouldn't bet on either side. It could totally be that a good large language model with a big enough context and sort of being strong enough can totally handle this. Very cool to see. Tactics 2D is a reinforcement learning environment library with generative scenarios for for driving decision making. This will build you a little world where you can simulate kind of driving situations and try to build your driving AI or decision maker. I'm not entirely sure what else you can do with it, but maybe this can also be, I don't know, if you're doing traffic light simulations or something like this. But I think the main point is for driving decision making situations. So very cool. Justine has released a blog post called Lama Now Goes Faster on CPUs, saying Justine wrote, and by the way, Justine has the best website. It's called justine.lol. Beautiful. 84 new matrix multiplication kernels for Llama file, which enable it to read prompts and images faster. Compared to llama.cpp, prompt eval time with Llama file should go anywhere between 30% and 500% faster when using reduced precision weights on CPU. So this uses various CPU special instructions like AVX instructions, also specific instructions for ARM if they're available. That makes it go really, really fast. If you look into this post and kind of at the code that has to be written, you will, like, my eyes hurt. It's all like unrolling loops and perfectly aligning multiplications with memory boundaries and so on. People who do this kind of stuff are heroes, and they need to be really masters of craft, I guess. But it does help. Really ugly code is sometimes really, really fast. So that's the case here. But very cool that people spend time optimizing this and actually putting this into libraries and implementations so the rest of us can just use it and it just goes fast. Thank you, Justine. Microsoft has released a free course called Generative AI for Beginners. I'm going to need, this is half an actual course and also half an ad for their Azure OpenAI service. So what you need, access to the Azure OpenAI service or OpenAI API, only if you want to complete the coding lessons. But the course is actually good. So you can see there is a lot of lessons using generative AI responsibly, understanding prompt engineering fundamentals, building chat applications, using vector databases, building low-code applications, and so on. If you're a beginner to generative AI, it could be a very good resource, even if you don't want to do the coding stuff. And lastly, Julian from Hugging Face has tweeted out this. There is a library now available that is a streaming parser for the gguf file format. And you can see this is an NPM package. The idea here is that we want to push out inference to the edge, for example, to web browsers. And there it's really important that files can be read in a streaming fashion, so on. You don't want to download big chunky boys onto browser before you can use them. So you can either request just part of a file or in a streaming fashion consume the file. And this library here allows you to do that for the gguf file format that is now becoming very, very popular to send around model files and so on. Excellent. gguf is the new single file weights format that's been taking over the Hugging Face Hub by storm. We implemented a nice gguf parser that works on remotely hosted files. Excellent. Thank you. And that was already it for tools and libraries of this week. I hope that was something in there for you. If not, I don't know. Send me more stuff. Send me useful stuff. Whatever is useful to you is probably useful to someone else. And if I haven't mentioned it, more than happy to, as long as it's openly available. All right, that's it. See you around. Bye-bye.